Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I am your host, John DeLynn. It is October 18th, 2022, and we are in part 2 of our interview with Brinley Jensen. Hey, Brinley.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
We just spent 3 hours where Brinley talked about a very sobering and timely topic, which was what happens when you're a Mormon missionary young woman and you reach such levels of depression and anxiety on your Mormon mission that you want to die. And it's a harsh thing. It's a strong thing to say, but that was not only Brinley's experience, but it's been the experience of tens of thousands of Mormon missionaries over the years. And the Mormon church is having an epidemic of a mental health crisis with its missionaries in 2021, 2022, which is not just a Mormon crisis. There's an epidemic of mental health for teenagers and young adults in the United States. So it's really important that we're talking about it. Brinley just spent 3 hours talking to us about her faithful Mormon upbringing in Ogden, Utah, and her time in high school of deep sexual shame around religious purity and purity culture within a Christian and Mormon context. And then her time on a mission in Florida, where she did a lot of good things, but reached such levels of anxiety and depression that she wanted to die and ended up coming home early from her mission. So that's where we left off part 1. Please, if you haven't watched it, pause, go back and watch that. It'll make part 2 a lot more meaningful. But now we're going to start part 2, which is about the aftermath of returning home from a Mormon mission, and then her faith processing, possibly deconstruction, and then whatever the reconstruction looks like. That's going to be what part 2 is about. Is that right, Brinley?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
Excited to be here.
How was your snack? How was your break?
It was great. It was delicious.
All right. And if that weren't enough, we also have Margie DeLynn in the house as co-host. Hey, Margie.
Hey, babe.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so happy.
So great to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Brinley. So we left off with you talking about your homecoming and how the Mormon church pressured you to act like you were great and act like you were still faithful in a way that was continuing the trauma and the harm that you experienced on your mission.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I came home, still obviously was not doing good at all, but kind of felt like I had to put up a front, not for my family because they were accepting and loving and wanted me to feel better, but just for, I feel like, the Mormon community and for the church as a whole.
Yeah.
Definitely put up a front.
Well, where should we go next in your story? Because I'm guessing there was still some residue from your mission. I know we talked during the break about the homecoming of your mission president. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about other things that you learned from missionaries who came back from your mission, but also just your story. So where should we go from here?
I think to start, my mental health started getting better. I got on a new medication. I went to a doctor in the real world. It wasn't in the mission world that got me on a really good medication. And I was starting to do better, but I still had a lot of struggles with my faith and what that meant. And at that point, I feel like I considered myself pretty nuanced, but still very faithful. Like, my doubts scared me a lot. And I was doing everything in my power to still feel those spiritual feelings that come with a mission. Because when you're surrounded by church constantly, it's relatively easy to keep believing. But when you go back to the real world and it's up to you whether or not you keep practicing, it can be a little tricky. And so I think what started for me was my biggest struggle was the temple. So I didn't share this in the last episode, but because of COVID, most missionaries, when they receive their endowment in the temple, they do that before their missions, but I had to do it on my mission. So
you went through and took out your endowment in the temple while you were on your mission?
Yeah, in Orlando.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it was a few months after I had gotten there, November of 2020.
Whoa. You
Yeah.
were a couple months into your mission before you went through the temple.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So did you wear garments then?
No.
So you, okay.
So
Yeah.
you started
I
your
had to
mission
pack
not-
them with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you weren't wearing them yet.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
But I knew I had reservations because I had heard people saying like, it's kind of weird, but it's sacred. And I just had this feeling like, I don't think I'm going to like this. And I was talking to my trainers about it, like, just help me prepare. And they're like, just don't try and memorize everything. Just know, like, it's sacred. Just live in the moment. And so it was a big deal because you're there with, my parents flew to Florida to come through with me. And my mission president's there. And other missionaries that I look up to were there. And it was horrible.
What? The temple experience?
The whole experience.
Take us through that.
Yeah, so I was already scared. I was scared of wearing garments. I was scared of adjusting. And I went in there, and at first everything was fine until we got to the portion where it's the actual endowment ceremony. And forgive me if I forget some things because this is the one and only time I've gone through. I haven't been to the temple since. But I just remember as I'm sitting there wearing these clothes.
So there would have been the washings and anointing first, which has been changed
Yes.
since I went through.
Oh, really?
But you're wearing some sort of poncho, and they're touching you with oil on your head, probably.
Yeah,
giving you
they
some
put
type of
oil on my
blessing.
head, give me a new name, and I was just like, okay, this is fine. Telling me I'm going to be a goddess or something, or a queen, I don't remember. And
In heaven.
yes, something like that. And I remember my mom saying, like, wasn't that just amazing? And I'm like, yeah, like feeling a little overwhelmed. And then we get to the actual, is it called like just the room?
The endowment ceremony?
Yeah, the endowment ceremony.
And did they have you veil your face, or was that taken away?
No, they didn't do that at
So
that
they
time.
had changed
I think they
They had taken away the face veiling for women
yes.
by the time you went through.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're in white. You're dressed in white.
With the
in a
green.
dress.
Yeah.
Apron.
Yeah, I remember, well, the first thing I remember is we walk through to get the clothing, and they're like, it's your lucky day. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you don't have to pay because you're a missionary. And I was like, pay? People pay in here? And my first thought was, in the Bible, one of the only times Jesus got mad was when people were
Money changers at the temple.
money in the temple.
But you have to pay to like rent clothing at the
Yeah.
temple. Yeah.
And I'm like, you can buy stuff in here?
Yeah.
And I just thought, that is the strangest thing.
They also have a cafeteria. In most
Yeah,
temples.
they have a cafeteria.
Yeah.
I found that out too. You can go buy ice cream, expensive ice cream. I was like, I'm pretty sure Jesus doesn't need us to spend money in his temple. So that was the first red flag. I was like,
No
why
Jesus
are we buying?
endorsement.
Yeah, I was like, if we're renting it, like if I'm giving it back, why do I have to pay to use it for a few hours?
Yeah.
And so I was like, yay, I don't have to pay. Okay. And we walk in, and I held my bag upside down, and I dropped all the temple clothes on the ground. And just this old woman just looks at me like, you did not just drop all those clothes on the ground. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I shove them back in the bag, and I'm sitting next to my mom. And I just remember feeling so uncomfortable. And we're watching the video play, and I don't remember most of it, honestly.
It's a lot of like Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
God and Jesus and
Adam and Eve, Satan, just
Yeah.
watching this play, and I'm like, what is happening? And I was nervous, and I'm going through doing all the steps, and then it got to the part where it was time for the prayer circle. And I just remember being like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go up there. But I remembered, like, when I first sat down, they say, like, if any of you are not worthy to be here, like, if you don't want to be here, like, leave now. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. But my parents flew across the country to watch me do this. Like, this is supposed to be one of the biggest moments of my life. Like, this is ensuring me to live with my family forever. I'm not walking out. Like, you can't just walk out.
So it's kind of coercive.
Yeah. And I'm like 3 months into my mission. They're not going to let me stay out if I refuse to go through the temple.
Yeah.
Automatically sent home, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, okay, I just got to do it. And as I walk up and we're doing the hand signals and doing all the things and standing in the circle, and I just have tears like running down my face. The only phrase I can think that describes like how I was feeling is that my soul rejected it. I was like, this isn't right. I was like, I don't know why, but I don't like this place. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't see how this is sacred. And I feel extremely uncomfortable. And I think the worst part was when it was time to step through the veil. And I was crying the whole time, and everyone, I'm sure, was like, oh, she's feeling the spirit or whatever. But I was panicking. And it was time to go through the veil. And
What didn't you like?
I didn't like, and I know to so many members, the response is, well, it's because it's not worldly and you're not used to it and it's ancient. But it was a gut feeling. Even as a fully believing missionary, it was a gut feeling, first of all. And it was that, why, if God loves us all so much, is this the only way to see him again and to be with our families? I was like, what about all these other great people? And I'm like, and this makes me so uncomfortable and like sick. Like I felt awful. And I'm like, God wants me to do this.
So you're learning handshakes that you're going to need to be able to give to angels in heaven. You're learning penalties or signs and penalties, but you're also making covenants. You're covenanting consecration. You're covenanting obedience, the law of chastity. So I mean, I guess I'm just devil's advocate. I'm saying, hey, you're learning a bunch of handshakes and hand wavy things, but also you're making sacred covenants with God to be righteous. What's not to love? And there's Adam and Eve and a little bit of Satan to boot, along with Jesus and God, right? What's not to love?
And I think my thought, like I thought of that in there, and I would say, didn't I promise all this already at baptism? It's exactly what I promised. I was waiting for this like crazy, like, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I know there's things they used to say. And I mean, when they said like, don't ever laugh loudly, don't speak ill of other endowed people. And I'm like,
no, they say don't speak ill of the Lord's anointed, which means never criticize a church leader.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says avoid loud laughter and evil speaking of the Lord's anointed, which means never criticize a church leader.
Well, I've done both of those things now.
But at the time when you hear those things.
Yeah, it's like, well, I remember asking my mom in the celestial room, like, I laugh so loud all the time. And she's like, no, like, it just means, like, don't be obnoxious. Like, don't, like, there's not really an explanation for why you shouldn't laugh loudly. It's basically a reminder to be humble and stay in your place and do what you're told, is what that sounds like to me. And I didn't like it at all. And I was just like, all these promises I'm making, I had to promise to do all these things to even be able to come on a mission in the first place. Like, so why am I promising again? And why is this the only way? Like, why, if Jesus fulfilled everything when he died, and that's what I'm preaching, then why am I adding this on? And I think the worst part was going up to the veil, and I turned to the lady, because I didn't know what to do, obviously, and she told me to put my hands through to touch the man on the other side, and I said, I don't want to. And she grabbed my hand forced it through the veil to grab this man I can't see. And then he reaches through and grabs me, and I pulled my arm away because I didn't want him to touch. I just felt so like violated and uncomfortable. I didn't know what was going on. Like, I don't know why it affected me this way, but it did. And he yanked my arm back. And she said, you need to go through to get to the celestial room. This is what you need to say. And I don't remember everything you have to say or what you have to do. And she had the part where I'm supposed to say my fake name, Abigail, or my new name. And I just thought, like, that's not my name. Like, I'm Brinley. Don't try and, why do we have to have a fake name? Why do we have to have a new name? And how they told me I can never tell anyone except my husband, but he can't know mine. And I'm like, I don't have a husband. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it just felt like they were trying to put a new identity on me. Like, this is who you are now. You have to keep these secrets. Like, keep all these promises that you didn't know you were going to make until you came in here, and you're not allowed to talk about it outside of the temple, so there's no real informed consent. And I was just like, I think I understand why everyone loves the celestial room so much. It's because they're finally out of that room that literally I hated. Because I was so relieved. And I remember sitting in there with my parents, and I see another sister who's sobbing, and she does not look okay. And I'm like, is she feeling the same things I'm feeling? And they're like talking to me about it, and I'm like, I feel a little bit better now. And as we're walking out, I stopped and looked at myself in the mirror. And I was just like, who is that? Like, I'm wearing this veil and these clothes.
You're wearing a white dress with a green apron.
Yeah.
With kind of what, a head
little veil thing on the back of my head. And I was just like, it was like an out of body experience. I was like, that is not me. And in that moment, I was like, I will never come in here again. And I think that's one of those little steps where I was like, I'm nuanced. Because I was like, I'm going to be a fully believing member, but I never want to come in here again. Mm-hmm. And I had said that to a few companions, and they're like, you'll get used to it later. And I was like, no, I'm never going back. I never want to feel that way again. Like, I can't say enough how I was like, I'm never going back.
And you went through a totally sanitized version. They took out all the death penalties where you cut your throat and disembowel yourself. They took out the parts where you have to covenant, where you covenant to hearken to your spouse, your male spouse, as they covenant with God, the veiling of your face, an evil preacher in the temple. Like, they took out so much you didn't have to, and it was still hard.
And it was still, even if it wasn't weird, I think something in me would have still been like, you don't like it here.
Yeah.
Because it was just, my gut was just like, this place is not for you. Yeah. That's just how I felt. And so I get home, and the first thing they're like, we're getting you straight to the temple. Everything's going to be great. And I looked at my stake president.
Wait. Now we're back.
Now I'm back home.
Returned home from your mission.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't ever tell my parents that I hated it in there, because obviously that's concerning to Orthodox Mormon parents.
Yeah.
And so I'm home, not doing well. And the first thing my stake president says is, you got to go to the temple. And I was like, no. And my parents look at me like, what? And I was like, I'm really scared of the temple. And he's like, oh, okay, you can wait for a while. And I'm like, okay. And in the car, my parents are like, why didn't you say anything? And I'm like, because I didn't want to offend you guys, but like, it scared me. And they're like, that's okay. Like, you'll get used to it. And I don't think they thought anything of it then. But as time went on, like, I started feeling uncomfortable wearing my garments. And I'd not wear them as often. But I was like,
explain why, like, what's not to love about garments? I know, but explain why.
It just made me feel not like myself. And as a woman in the church, you don't think you're allowed to want to look good when you're changing in the mirror. So like, that seems worldly, but it just made me feel like out of body. I was like, I don't like them. I don't like the symbols on them. I don't like how they make, like, all day long, I'm constantly reminded of that horrible memory in the temple because I can constantly feel them on me. It's hot in Utah. Like all day, every day, I'm like, oh, that was terrible. I just have to keep remembering that I'm supposed to wear these. And so I'd like skip a few days and then be like, okay, I should probably wear them again. And then like not wear them for a week and then be like, okay, I'll wear them. And then it got to the point where they were just in my drawer and they never came out again. But the point where I was like, because this whole time I remember praying about it and feeling like God does not care if I wear these. Like I remember in my car praying out loud and just feeling at peace, like, no, I don't need to wear them. That was how I felt at the time. And so I felt fine going to church and doing all these Mormon things, but just not wearing them and having a few different beliefs. Until one day, my dad he approached me and he's like, have you been wearing your garments? And my response was, well, that's none of your business. And he's like, well, I am your bishop, and was kind of talking to me about it. And he's like, they're important, like you covenanted. And that's the first time I remember thinking, like for a split moment, I was like, I can't be myself in this church. Like I can't really do whatever I want, can I? And in that moment of panic, I cried. My dad left my room. I closed the door, locked it, got on my phone, and I texted a really nice lady named Heather. And she and her family, I worked for them at a little ice cream shop. And they had left the church when I was a teenager. And I was always so curious about it. I constantly prayed for them to come back. Even reached out to them on my mission. But I remember texting her and I was like, Heather, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think. Help me. And then immediately after sending it, I was like, I should not have done that. I'm just having a moment. I'm fine in the church. And so she texts me back and she's like, yeah, let's go for a drive. And I'm just like, I think I ignored her or like said I'm busy or something. Because I was like, no, I can't talk to her. Because I think a part of me knew if I talked to her, it would all just come crashing down. But from that point forward, I just did everything I could to strengthen my faith. Like, I told myself, even if I have to brainwash myself into fully believing again, just so I can feel the safe and comfort of staying in the church, pleasing my family, then that's fine. So I would go at night and watch just like all the church videos I could find, inspirational messages, conference talks. I would watch them till like late hours of the evening, just in my bed on my laptop. Like I fully was fine with the fact that I was trying to brainwash myself. Like feel the happy feelings, associate them with these videos, and regain my faith. That was the plan.
And that isn't the first time you did that, because on your mission, after you had so much tension with your mission president, it's another example of when you said, I'm doing it again. I'm going to be faithful again. I'm going to be good again. And shove it all down.
And watching the Holland videos.
Yeah.
Just over and over and over again. Like, right?
Yeah, that's weird that a church doesn't have to brainwash you. Sometimes they can get you to brainwash yourself.
Because it feels much safer. I think that's what lots of people don't understand is that, like, I wanted nothing more than to just, I was like, if I can brainwash myself into loving everything about the church, then that means I'll love the temple. I'll have my perfect temple marriage. I'll start going to the temple regularly. Like, I'll get over my fears and everything will be fine. And I remember I had learned a lot about church history by then from my mission.
Let's back up.
Yeah.
So what did you learn and how did you learn it?
So on my mission, I did look at gospel topics a lot.
What, the gospel topics essays?
Yeah.
Okay. So most Mormons still have never heard of or read the gospel topics essays.
And they're right there.
Talk about how you learned about them and then what you learned from them.
I was trying to find answers because it was towards the end of my mission, and I was like really not understanding the whole blacks in the priesthood. And so I read the Gospel Topics essay on that. Still didn't really feel much better because, I don't know, the Gospel Topics essays are funny because they openly admit to so many things, but they find a way to make it okay. And so then you're just left confused. And like there were so many things. I remember a companion saying, yeah, I struggle with Emma Smith. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, she left the church right after Joseph died, started her own thing. I was like, what? No one told me that. Everyone said she was faithful and was by his side, full believing, and I'm like, well, that's suspicious, isn't it? And then we would listen to Mindy Gledhill all the time. And I was like, I love her. She, her music just strengthens my faith. And my companion's like, well, she left the church. And I remember obsessively stalking her Facebook after that. I found her on Facebook and I was like, oh my gosh. She left the church.
And we've interviewed Mindy a couple times on
Yeah, she's amazing. But just anything like that, it would make me so upset, but I just put it on the shelf, like they say. I really was I've heard everything by now, nothing can break my faith. And so when I was home struggling with all this and I decided to look up the CES letter, I was hoping for something that could just be so shocking that I could just hear everything and get over it and go back to my faith. And I'm reading through it and nothing surprised me. The whole time I was of course the temple rituals are from Freemasonry. That's why I didn't like it. And all these things, and I'm it didn't change anything. And I was like, what the heck? The CS letter is supposed to be if you can get past the CS letter, you can get past anything. And I'm just in the same spot, if that makes sense.
So you read the CS letter?
Yeah. I skimmed through it. I was like, I knew that.
Wait. What are the things in the CES letter that you remember
already
reading?
knowing?
Yeah,
Or
both knowing and then also learning for the first time.
Yeah. I do need to go back and read it. I'm not going to lie.
Well, just whatever.
But I remember the main thing I wanted to read about was the temple. And that's when I found out about the slitting of throats and all the promises that used to be there. And then when it was talking about Freemasonry and all those hand signals and how that's where it came from, and it literally showed the diagram, and I was like, I remember doing those, and it's not even sacred. It's not even given to Joseph Smith by God, but it just didn't surprise me. I was like, yeah, okay. And just hearing, I read about all of Joseph Smith's wives and Fanny Alger and Alger.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just
and the 14-year-olds,
yes,
and the sister pairs and the mother-daughter pairs and
yeah,
the polyandry where he married other men's wives.
Yes, exactly. And
not other women who were married to other men, I should say.
Yeah, because the first time I heard about Joseph Smith practicing polygamy, it was well, he was helping them because their husbands were off at war and they needed someone to be the patriarch of the home. So as the prophet, he was doing his duty. That's all I ever heard. And whenever it was about a 14-year-old bride, I'm pretty sure I watched a Saints Unscripted where they were well, there was no sexual anything. And then you hear other stories about why Oliver Cowdery was really excommunicated. And
for accusing Joseph of adultery.
Yeah.
Because he was having sex with Fanny Alger.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
No.
And all these things that I'm just this doesn't even surprise me. And the most frustrating part was I was I still want to be Mormon. It's so much easier to just try and set all of this aside and be somehow, some way, this is all still true. I'm not raised in a lying religion. For some reason, it had to be hidden from me. I'm just going to go back. So I would read like the CES letter or like gospel topics, and then I'd be like, okay, now back to brainwashing myself, and I'd watch Hope Works videos on the church's website about people that went through a faith crisis and came through on the other side after 10 years. And I'm like, yeah, see, I'll be fine. So it was just like a mental battle constantly, if that makes sense. Like Joseph Smith did this, but also like I like this scripture in the Book of Mormon. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that other than it was just like a mental gymnastics. You hear that phrase a lot when it comes to deconstructing or going through a faith crisis, but it's impossible to understand when you see both sides and you're trying to like reconcile both of them at the same time.
What about the Book of Mormon? You know, a lot of people say, well, that's the thing no one can answer. The Book of Mormon's so awesome and true. It's impenetrable. So did you start to question the Book of Mormon? And if so, how or why?
I, at that point, was so exhausted with scriptures and trying to figure out my beliefs. I didn't even, like, the Book of Mormon wasn't even on my list. I didn't read it. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to think about it. Like, even while I was seriously doubting, I was like, who knows? Maybe the Book of Mormon's true. There's just already so much other history that I'm trying to like figure out what I believe right now. The Book of Mormon's like the last thing. And then when I would go through it, I wish I brought my Book of Mormon for my mission, because I would write like in every controversial section, I'd write a bunch of excuses. Like, but they meant this and this and this. Like in 2nd Nephi, when it talks about the curse of black skin, I was like, well, maybe they just said this. I had like 6 sticky notes. I was like, maybe this just means like someone with lighter skin married someone with darker skin, so then their children had darker skin and it just changed the generations, and like it wasn't actually a curse, it's just a coincidence. Like it was just complete like, no, that's not what they mean, when you can just read it. Just read the words and it's clearly racist. And so, yeah, it was just a bunch of mental gymnastics I didn't even have the energy for.
Okay. So what happened next?
So I can't even remember when the exact turning point was, but...
Now, did your mission president's farewell already happened or
no? That was like
okay.
a few months ago.
Okay, wait. Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like certain things just started to like break me. Like I couldn't take it anymore. Like I would go on dates. I remember going on a date with this guy, and immediately after the date, we're kissing or whatever, and he was like he wanted to have sex, and I said no. And immediately after, he was like, well, I don't think I can see you anymore because you don't wear your garments. And I was just like, I don't want to date these returned missionaries. Like this plan that I'm supposed to follow sucks.
So the missionaries wanted to have sex with you, but also wanted you to wear your garments.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And like, I wasn't judging him for the fact that he was sexually active. That wasn't a problem. It was the fact that I just didn't want to with him. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he comes back at me about not wearing my garments. And so things like that just started to happen. And I remember, I don't know if Jeffrey Holland's whole musket speech came out on my mission or after I was off my mission. It was around that time. But I went back and read it because I was like, I want to see what this is about. And I was furious, obviously. And I remember talking to my family, and I was like, guys.
It was August of last year. August
so
of
I
2021.
had just come home. Okay. And I remember talking to my family, and I was like, it's okay to disagree. Like, what he said was wrong. And it was just silence. And I was like, right, guys, we can disagree with them, right? And then as I'm trying to be like a advocate for people coming home from their mission, that stake president or bishop or whoever it was comes out and says, like, here's why you don't have a choice and you do have to go on your mission. And all these things, it gets to the point where you're just like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I was sick of trying to force myself. I was sick of going to church, but I kept going anyways to make my family happy. And finally, I was talking to my parents one night about all my struggles and about the temple and just everything. And I was like, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And they're like, well, try not to discount everything. Like, you don't know what Joseph Smith went through. You don't know his whole story. And I'm like, actually, I'm learning his whole story. And finally, it got to the point where, like, I had a conversation with them where I basically said, like, I'm done. I can't go to church. I can't put myself in that situation anymore. It got to the point also where before they knew, I would pretend I was going to the YSA ward, and then I would just go sit outside of the church building in my car and cry for 2 hours. And like, they finally realized I wasn't going to the YSA ward. But yeah, it's just such a mental battle. Like, I think people think you're just like, well, this church is crap, I'm out of here. But really, it's like trying so hard to stay, because like, I lost friends from leaving. People in my mission that are like, well, I don't want to be associated with you anymore if you're going to have tattoos and not be a member anymore. So it would have been much easier for me to just pretend and keep going. So that's kind of it, just like slowly and then all at once. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I ended up reaching out to Heather again and going to her house and just crying about how I needed to tell my family. And
so Heather, was she a former Mormon? Was she a current Mormon?
Her whole family, they all used to be Mormon. Her and her husband and her kids. And they left when I was in high school or junior high. And I remember her sons were like, they're both a little younger than me. And they would talk about Joseph Smith, and I'd be like, I don't want to hear it. That's so offensive. Like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Like, I just thought, like, anti-Mormon material took them over.
But you still loved her.
Yes, of course, because they were always so nice to me. And I remember thinking, why don't they have, like, a dark countenance like everyone says? Like, why don't they look evil? Mm-hmm. They're, like, the nicest people ever. And so they really helped me a lot in, giving me advice on how to tell my family and being really supportive. But yeah, I don't know what else you want me to say about that. It got to that point.
Okay. Yeah, like, it's nice that you were able to find a support who was outside the church, right?
Yes.
Because at that point, everyone in the church, it's like your mission therapist. There's a conflict of interest. Even though your parents love you, there are many Mormon parents that care more about their kids' faithfulness than they do about their kids' well-being.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying your parents didn't care about your well-being, but I think parents can be blinded by their, especially if your dad's a bishop, they can be blinded by their faithfulness and not actually seeing you, as Margie would say, and seeing your real mental health needs.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think, like, every Orthodox Mormon parents, like, all they want is for their kids to grow up and be Mormon, follow all the rules, make all those covenants, go through the temple, find a husband or wife that's worthy, have children, happily ever after. You'll live together forever. And so I understand how that could be painful, but I also would hope that, like any other parent, because mine have been supportive of me, but it's still hard knowing that really what they probably want more than anything is for me to come back to the church. And so I would hope that any parent who has a child leaving the church would think of both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you reach a breaking point and you just tell your parents you can't do it anymore, and Heather becomes a real support to you.
Yeah. And
can I ask you a quick question?
Yes. So
this is a total side, but you talk about losing friends because you got tattoos. And I get it, because when some of my children started getting tattoos, it was very hurtful or offensive to my Mormon brain. So I'm now
to your conditioning.
Yeah, to my conditioning. So it was like, this is a bad thing, because I had been taught your body's a temple.
Yeah.
You never want to defile the Lord's holy temple, so you don't get tattoos or extra piercings or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that eventually made it into the Strength of the Youth pamphlet, and it became Mormon culture. Not only do you not get tattoos, but women shouldn't get a second ear piercing. Mm-hmm. And that's been Mormon culture forever.
Yeah.
And if you got a tattoo, your parents would be shocked and disappointed, and you could lose friends, which may or may not be shocking to our viewers and listeners.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, the Mormon Church, Dieter Uchtdorf, apostle, announced a revision to the For the Strength of the Youth pamphlet, and they took out those rules about no tattoos and no additional piercings.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering what that was like for you to hear that.
Yeah. I didn't watch conference at all.
Yeah.
And so when I heard of this happening, I was like, are you kidding me? That was honestly my reaction, because I've had Mormon friends be like, isn't that so exciting? And I'm like, no. Because first of all, you should have felt the freedom to do that, whether or not someone else that you've never even met tells you can or not. And what in God's law and power changed between the 5 minutes that he announced that? Like, God's still the same person he was before, right? And you're still the same person you were 5 minutes ago. And Dieter Uchtdorf is still the same person he was 5 minutes ago. So what really changed? Like, they know that, in my opinion, there's a chance more people will stay in the church if they don't feel like they're being judged for that. But when they say, well, you can pray about it, I still know there's plenty of people that are going to be like, well, God's never going to tell you to do that. And so I'm like, I'm happy that some of these youth hopefully don't feel the same pressure and guilt and shame, but that doesn't take away the 21 years of my life where I felt judged and had hurtful things said to me. And same with all of the people. Like, that doesn't change the young women's lesson I had where they posted pictures on the board of women with tattoos and piercings and said, like, that's bad. Men will view you as an object if you do that. So to me, it doesn't change anything. Like, it doesn't fix anything just by changing the pamphlet. It was still harmful.
It might make you lose less friends.
Yeah, true.
But I guess you could say, should Christians be abandoning you as friends for tattoos and piercings anyway?
No. Like, it's great. I'm glad that there are youth like the way I was, that hopefully will be relieved of that pressure to be perfect and maybe be taught to rely on themselves a little more. But it doesn't change the fact that they only get to do it because someone else is saying, okay, you have my permission, but pray about it and you better make the right decision.
Yeah. It's like, does that achieve sort of body autonomy then?
Yeah, exactly. So that's my thoughts on that. They manage to tweak little things to try and please people, but it doesn't really fix the deep-rooted problems.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So around what month and year did you kind of say I'm done then?
I think before I told my family, like when I really on my own, knew I was done, it was probably January. That was the last time I paid tithing.
Of 2022.
Yeah, this year.
So of this year.
January.
So we're talking 10 months ago.
Yeah. And even in December, I didn't believe, but I kept paying my tithing.
What's that about?
Just conditioning, I think. I just was like, I have to. And then finally I was like, no, I don't. I don't want to pay for all these temples and missions and whatever else. And I remember mentioning to someone like, well, maybe I could just donate to like other charities. And they're like, well, God knows where to put his money. Like, that's why you give it to the church. I'm like, does he? Because I didn't really like the things that my money was going to.
LGBT stuff, fighting same-sex marriage, marriage equality.
Yeah, because when the church talks about tithing, they show videos of the yellow helping hands and all of that. But I served in Florida in hurricane season. I never saw helping hands shirts. It's the communities that come together and fix everything, really. And so I just remember thinking, like, so what does this money go to? Because I'm where they're saying it's happening on the coast in a hurricane. And it's really just communities coming together, not the church.
Yeah. And then when you see that the actual money is going to fight same-sex marriage, to lobby Supreme Court justices, to lobby congressmen, to take away rights from minorities.
Yeah.
Then it's really hard to pay your tithing to the church.
Yeah. And it hurts that I was willingly giving that money, not knowing that I was contributing to that hurt of other people.
Okay. All right. So 10 months ago, you stopped paying tithing.
Yeah. 10 months ago, yeah.
Yeah. Did you keep trying to date Mormon boys?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Just because I've had so many men in the church who will say like, well, I don't mind that you're not Mormon, but then they want to take me out and they're bearing their testimony to me. And I'm like, well, this just makes me uncomfortable. So no, I've let go of the patriarchal blessing life plan. So that's good. But
Okay.
I think a lot of the things that have happened since have just kind of solidified my feelings, lots of different experiences.
That would mean dating non-Mormon.
Yes.
Or either not dating or dating other people that weren't Mormon.
Yeah, non-Mormon.
And that means probably having to confront the teachings around sexuality and the law of chastity that you had believed for so long.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's also one of the biggest things is letting go of purity culture, that I'm inherently bad is basically what that tells me.
What was that process like? How did that go? Like, take us through decisions or like steps in that process.
And it may be still in process.
If you want to. Well, I'm just saying the first hour of our conversation was kind of about that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of deconstructing those messages, learning to listen to yourself and learning to make decisions on your own. But again, you may not either have started processing that or you may not want to talk about it. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'll only say what I'm comfortable with for sure, but it's definitely hard. I remember on my mission, even some sisters and I, when we were looking for Christian accounts, we found she's a member of the Mormon church, and I forget her name, so sorry if she ever hears this, but she calls herself the Christian sex educator online. And we were like looking at her stuff and she's talking about like deconstructing purity culture. And I was like, she's Mormon. Like, is this allowed to like, as a woman, talk about even enjoying sex? I was like, that is actually unheard of. And it was actually cool, the conversations that we would have, myself and my companion and 2 other sisters that served in an area similar to us, and just talking about it and realizing that like we all have the same experiences, and like it almost became funny, like like you had that happen to you growing up too, like you felt guilty about that too. And it's just like normal. And even now,
You're talking about masturbation.
yeah, just anything inherently sexual at all. And like, it's crazy to see how different someone's childhood is growing up outside of the church. Like one of my really good friends right now, like we talk about this all the time. And she's like, that was like a topic with friends, like outside of the church, like with boys and anything, like just so normal and healthy and just everyday life. And so
it was like integrated. It was viewed as like part of the journey, part of yourself.
Part of growing
Inherent.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And so I think I had to slowly, I remember the first time I had a sexual experience with another person post-mission, I threw up after when I got home. And I felt like something was wrong with me and like I was the worst person ever. And I remember I was like, I need to put a stop to this, first of all. And this was even still when I was trying to stay in the church. And I wrote down affirmations like, I am not guilty. I am not shameful. Like, I am not wrong. I'm smart. I'm kind, whatever. And I repeated them to myself for a week straight until I didn't feel sick thinking about it. And I had to do that for like months to be like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a sinner. God doesn't hate me. I had to do that constantly. So, I mean, thank God for affirmations, but they work.
Yeah.
But it's sad that I literally had to like rewire my brain to not be like, there's something wrong with you. You're going against God's will. That kind of thing.
You're deprogramming yourself from toxic purity culture Christianity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mormonism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any questions other than
Yeah.
that?
So you worked to rid yourself of toxic purity culture.
Yes.
And I guess positive sexual health.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of reclaimed a piece of yourself.
Yeah. My body,
For
reclaimed
you.
my own body. Definitely.
And your sexuality, your own desire,
Yes.
your own, pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the church teaches in the Book of Mormon and elsewhere, there's this saying, wickedness never was happiness.
Yeah.
And so if you're in any way being sexual outside the bonds of a straight marriage, according to the church, that's evil next to murder. But how has that impacted your mental health and well-being to destigmatize your sexuality and to become educated about sexuality and empowered around sexuality? How's that been for your mental health and well-being?
At first, the whole wickedness never was happiness thing just tells you that you're wicked then, And so that was definitely not good on my mental health, obviously, if I'm becoming physically sick, just at the thought of my own sexuality. But letting go of that and rewiring how I think about it is honestly just liberating. And then it's like, well, if wickedness never was happiness, it must not be wicked because I'm happy. So, that's the word that first comes to my mind is liberating, empowering, makes me more sure of myself, helps me not to let others walk all over me. Because up until I let go of those beliefs, it was a bunch of old white men controlling how I felt about my sexuality. And that makes me uncomfortable.
That's such a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but just while we're on this topic, there's a flip side, which was kind of how we started, that there's STIs out there, there's abuse, there's assault, there's unwanted pregnancies. And so it's not like the secret to joy is having uncontrolled, unprotected sex with anyone that you
Yeah.
want to, right? So, I mean, there was at least some good intention in the church trying
Yeah.
to, so how are you, but then if you don't have God or the church controlling you, I guess someone would say, well, then there's a risk of you going out of control and hurting yourself or others.
Yeah, it's true. And that's why I think instead of shaming, if the church is so worried, or if any Christian is so worried about things like that, then educate yourself and your children if you have them. Or if you're in a leadership position, educate the people you're leading. Because I remember my 8th grade health class in Utah, and it was never have sex, don't even hug too close, because then you'll get pregnant, and abortions are bad, so you can't get an abortion, so you're stuck with a kid, and you'll probably have STDs, and that's all. That's all I heard. And so, first of all, it made me extremely judgmental towards anyone I knew in junior high or high school who was sexually active, and these kids aren't getting the help and education they need to stay safe because all they've been told is don't do this, but they're going to do it anyways because that's what they wanted to do. So ultimately, people are going to make their own decisions, but the only thing they can control is how they feel about themselves as a result of these decisions and how they can protect themselves based on the education they've received. So I think that's the mistake that the church has made. Is it's great to wait until marriage or to, be with one person or to be safe, but
if you want that.
Yeah, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely ways to be safe and to respect yourself and others. But it's too bad that the church does not provide that education. Instead, it's just don't do it.
And for those who want to become more educated, have there been any resources you can recommend for healthy sexual education?
Yeah, like Planned Parenthood. Big advocate for that. I remember hearing about one of my friends on the mission who said that she's like, yeah, before the mission, I would regularly get tested in between partners. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't know people did that. And I didn't know that someone could be sexually active and then go on a mission. But I think there's, education is so easy to find if you just look for it. You don't have to find it from your parents or someone you don't want to tell about it. Go look up Planned Parenthood on Instagram, go to their link. Boom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other resources for sexual health and education that were important to you?
I think when I followed the Christian sex educator, for young Christian youth and even people that are married, if someone wants a Christian-based education that makes them feel comfortable, that is respectful of people that want to wait for marriage or who don't, I thought she had really good resources because her content made me feel comfortable with myself. And she's very candid. And for someone who was a believing Mormon and still wanted to discover myself in that way, I thought she was very helpful and very safe and comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. While we're on this topic, you mentioned, and we can come back. Well, you mentioned learning from some of the elders that had served in your mission.
Yeah.
That they got some under the table,
some leeway.
back sort of whispered advice from your mission president that you weren't aware of at the time.
Yes.
Back up and just tell the story, because this is going to be a TikTok and Instagram short for sure. Because So let's start by you learning your whole life that masturbation's evil.
Yes.
And you feeling shame about it. So
for sure.
Start there.
Absolutely. That was something that I don't know if I want to say it traumatized me, because in comparison to the other things I've experienced, that is significantly smaller, but it definitely affected a huge part of who I was and how I felt about myself. the narrative around masturbation and sexuality in general that I received from the church. And so then to get home from my mission, lose my faith, be growing, finding myself, feeling comfortable in myself again. And I start reconnecting with other missionaries from my mission who have left the church or who are doubting. And I've had, the first time someone told me, I wasn't even sure if I believed them, but an elder I served with was talking to me, and he said that our mission president told him, if you struggle with masturbation, just keep it to once a week and you're good. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I got in trouble for wearing leggings on the beach or accused of flirting. And these elders, as long as they keep it to once a week, they're good. And that was something I felt so guilty about my whole life. And so I almost didn't believe him.
The first time.
The first time.
Someone told you.
Until I reconnect with a few others and hear the same thing. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. It's almost funny. It's not very funny because it sends a message to women of the church and to women in my mission that they aren't allowed to be sexual in any way. You can't even wear leggings because they're too tight. But the elders, if they just can't help themselves, can masturbate once a week and they're solid. That just shocked me.
Yeah.
That I'd spent so much time just beating myself up over the tiniest things.
Yeah.
But men can get away with it because they're inherently sexual and they can't help it. So
And there's some young Mormon men or women who either choose not to serve missions or are denied the ability to serve a mission, depending on how strict their bishop or stake president is. It changes the trajectory of their entire lives, maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, just because they can't stop masturbating. Mm-hmm. And so you've got this awful, toxic leadership roulette system now within Mormonism, where you've got super strict bishops or mission presidents that'll keep you from a mission or send you home for masturbating.
Yeah.
And then you've got other mission presidents that are saying, once a month is fine.
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
It is outrageous.
Yeah, and abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, that'll be a TikTok short for sure.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I hope every young Mormon man and woman will watch that short.
I hope so too. Maybe it'll make them feel a little bit better that some mission president out there is fine with it.
I mean, I'm sure at some level that mission president was told. I mean, so many Mormon missionaries are coming home early that the church it's with tattoos, piercings, but also masturbation and porn. They're having to adjust or they're going to lose everybody.
Yeah.
And so I bet it wasn't just that mission president. I bet an area authority or in the training, he picked that up from somewhere.
Yeah.
They don't want to let that out broadly, but I guarantee it wasn't just your mission president.
Oh, for sure. And the other thing too is all these mission presidents, bishops, stake presidents are told, like, use your personal revelation, pray about it and you'll know what to do. And so it's like, so one mission president could pray about it and be like, if I find out anyone's masturbating, they're sent home immediately. But then my mission president prays about it and it's like, well, the elders can do it because I know it's probably really hard for them.
Yeah, the inconsistency, right?
Yes, very inconsistent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from kind of your sexual health and elimination of sexual shame, let's continue with your story, the timeline and your processing.
Yeah.
Deconstruction and reconstruction. So, yeah, like, where should we go? Should we talk about where your faith proceeds, your other choices in your life? Like, you were going to go to BYU, Idaho.
Hawaii.
Sorry, BYU, Hawaii. Like, where should we go in your story next?
Well, if we did back it up a little bit, soon after I got home from my mission, I did apply for BYU Hawaii. Well, I was still a little, I was like, I believe. And I thought it was so funny because my patriarchal blessing says, you'll travel to pursue your higher education. And my whole life, I was like, BYU Hawaii. I sealed the deal. God told me I'm going to BYU Hawaii. And when I got the rejection letter, I was so relieved. because I knew I wouldn't last. Because I just hear all these stories. I actually had a girl I worked with tell me she hated it because she couldn't wear what she felt comfortable wearing in the heat of Hawaii and the humidity. You're on an island and you have to make sure there's no holes in your jeans, and you don't wear sandals on campus, and to cover up, don't be seen in a bikini. And
as a college student.
As a college student, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the wake of like being more confident and comfortable in myself and trusting myself more, I was disappointed. Like, I had wanted to get in, but when I got the rejection letter and I read it, I was like, I'm so glad I didn't go there. Because, I mean, you have to take religion classes. Like, I would have been just in agony. So I didn't get into BYU Hawaii, and that kind of allowed me to keep going with my path, trusting myself, making decisions because I wanted to make them. Like piercing my nose because I thought it was cute, and it doesn't matter because no one can tell me that I can't. Which seems so small, especially to someone that maybe has never understood, like the Mormon church or even other high demand religions telling you what to do. But when you finally, like, no one's stopping me from going and getting a tattoo. I could go get one right now, and I wouldn't cry and beat myself up about it. Like, I wish I could go back and tell my mission self that she was going to be so confident and that she could do whatever she wanted and not cry about it or throw up.
Yeah.
And that it would all be okay, because that's like the most liberating part.
And I love thinking about her too, because in a way she was practicing, she was flexing some of those muscles then for you to be here now. You know?
I love that you say that. Thank you. Because I don't think I realized that I was doing that, but I was. And it's crazy how much easier it is to stand up for yourself and stand your ground when, like, I don't need an organization to back me up. Like, I'm on my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
I have myself. So that's very empowering.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the theme of today is brainwashing yourself, silencing yourself, suppressing yourself, hiding yourself, conforming, and then breaking out of that, and self-discovery and self-empowerment.
Yeah.
That's probably the main, that's the human, that's the great human, that's the hero's journey.
Yeah,
of
it's
the human
true.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you start to realize, like, the world is so much bigger than the Mormon church. Like, it's such a relief to be able to say that I'm an ally.
LGBT ally.
Yeah, yes. And not have to be like, but I am Mormon, but like, I don't believe some of those things. Like, I really do love you guys. Like, that just sounds so condescending and ingenuine. And I can finally, and I'm not saying that there aren't Mormon allies, because I know there are, and there are great people who are trying to make a change. But when it comes down to it, it's not the culture of the church that says 2 women can't be together. It's the doctrine. And so it's so refreshing to be able to pick my own worldviews with no, like, wait, does that go along with what the prophet says? I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing that I do want to just pick up really quickly, because you mentioned your beautiful nose ring.
Thank you.
Is just also it feels like picking up a thread from before as well, when, you know, all the time and energy that kind of and focus that went into our bodies in a way that we received from the outside, right?
Yes.
About shoulders or what you can wear or how men would feel looking at, you know, if the hem is too short, or that this idea of taking your image, your expression of who you are, and accepting that from an outside source. There is something incredibly healing about expressing from the inside out. And that's can be piercings, that can be tattoos, that can be clothing, that can be hair, it can be, but it's not a small thing. It is not a trivial thing when you come from a tradition of being told on some level who to be, how to, project, how to, express yourself in a really, really confined, controlled, small space.
Absolutely.
So I love how you, have done that, and hope to ask you a little later about some of, some more about that. But just wanted to kind of, it is empowering.
Thank you. It's like a weight off your shoulders almost, that you're in control of your own body now. And of course, everyone has control over their own body, but there's no ulterior motive anymore. Mm-hmm. You're doing what you want because you want to, and it makes you happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question around transition too?
Mm-hmm.
How has it been for you to shift from a place where so much of your life was planned? So moving from this place of very highly structured, highly planned out, a formula that was in play. How has it been for you to shift away from that amidst transition? And
sometimes scary, because I mentioned in the part 1 that I didn't even think I was going to grow old.
Right.
I thought it was do my Mormon purpose and then Jesus will come and I'm good. But I think now it's really freeing to know that I can choose whatever life path makes me happiest. And I still don't even know what all of that entails yet.
Yeah.
But I think it allows me to just live in the moment, because I'm finally allowed to say, I don't want to be married right now. I don't want to get married at 21. I want to live my life and do things that make me happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And it's amazing to admit that.
Yeah.
And that I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. I can enjoy living in the space that I'm given right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was a good question.
And can I say, so earlier you mentioned something about the comfort of, being in a church that had all the answers. Do you remember that part?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm curious how it feels for you to be in a space of, it feels like living a lot of questions.
Yeah. At first, that also really scared me. But I think, I keep saying liberating and freeing, but those are the words that come to mind when you let go of that security that was, it was holding me down, really. It felt safe, but it's really confining when you're told the answers to everything. You don't get to find them out for yourselves. I think there's a quote at the beginning of the CES letter that's if it's true, then nothing can hurt it. But if it's not true, then it should be questioned. And so if that kind of makes sense with my answer, I'm allowed to question things now and figure out my own beliefs. And so not having the answers to everything is really scary if you're worried about the same things that worried you when you were part of that organization, if that makes sense. So now, I don't believe that a loving God would stop me from being with my family forever. So I'm not worried about what is going to happen or what afterlife is like or any of that, because living in the moment is more important to me than worrying, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you come quite naturally to this place of living in the moment? You've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is that a result of work you've done? Has it been kind of through...
You've read?
Yeah,
podcasts?
Tell us a little bit about that.
I think a lot of it is from therapy, because naturally for me as a person, it's easy to worry, to have anxiety over things, to think, what if? But I've learned a lot from therapy about living in the moment, because it's exhausting if you don't. Like, it really is exhausting to constantly think, like, what do all these Mormons think of me now that I'm going on a Mormon Stories podcast? What do they, like, what is going to happen with my future in Utah as a girl with tattoos and piercings and all those types of things?
Bikinis.
Yeah, and bikinis and tank tops and any of those things.
Shoulders.
Yeah, my shoulders showing. It's easy to worry about those things, but it's almost easier if you just let it all go and think, like, I'm finally to a place where that's not my responsibility to worry about anymore. Like, if people are going to be upset by my decisions, that's their weight to carry, not mine.
Yeah.
So I can just go forward with my life, try my best to be happy, treat others with kindness. That's all I have to worry about.
I love that.
Thank you.
That's almost a boundaries thing.
Yes, it is.
Actually.
It is definitely a boundaries thing.
Yeah.
Like, especially with family, you have to be okay with the fact that some things that you do might upset them,
Yeah.
even if you're not trying to intentionally hurt them, which, like, obviously I would never want to hurt my family, but I have to be okay with the fact that they aren't okay with me leaving the church.
Right.
How do you, I mean, I know 60-year-olds who haven't been able to do that. How have you been able to do it?
Become okay.
Yeah. With your family being unhappy with you or disappointed in you. It's
still hard. Like, there's ups and downs. Like, it's easy for me to say right now, but then if we're in the middle of a tough conversation, then obviously it's upsetting. I think it goes back to affirmations and more in the way of just reminding myself constantly and validating myself and surrounding myself with people who also validate that. And knowing, like, there have been people who have hurt me with things they've said or done, but they were just making decisions that were best for themselves. Like, isn't that what we're all trying to do? And so I just have to give myself grace, because I know the church is not a good place for me to be. I don't believe in any of its truth claims. So why would I keep myself in that for other people? Because I know they want my happiness, and if they really do, then they'll support me not being in that space.
Okay, so my brain is so programmed Mormon that I'm 53, excommunicated, and viewed as one of the Mormon Church's biggest enemies.
Yeah.
Even though a ton of believers and missionaries watch Mormon Stories.
Yeah.
I've still never tried beer. I've still never tried marijuana. Like, I am such a Mormon boy. In all, I've never tried psychedelics. So, like, my brain still flashes danger. My programmed brain still flashes danger with piercings and tattoos.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, like, sex outside marriage, like, I'm supportive of it.
Yeah.
But my brain still flashes danger.
Oh, yes. I understand that for sure.
But then when you add alcohol and drugs and psychedelics and then people are experimenting with ethical non-monogamy, things,
Yeah.
outside of outside of committed relationships. Like,
Yeah.
in my mind, there's still like this, you could get addicted to drugs. You could put yourself in danger. You could get STIs, and I used to tell this metaphor as a Mormon that the string is the best thing for a kite, because the string is what allows the kite to fly. Mm-hmm. If you snip the kite may think, I want freedom. I want liberation. And so cut this gosh dang string from me so I can really be free to fly.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would always say in my metaphor is, well, guess what happens to the kite when you cut all the strings? It falls to the ground and crashes to the ground.
Yeah.
So the string may feel like constraints, but really it allows for freedom because we're not smart enough to make all these decisions. And all these things that the church warned us against can be risky and can be dangerous. And once you're free to take as much drugs as you want, have as much sex with as many people as you want, and, experiment in all the possible ways, you could end up in really deep trouble.
Yeah.
And it's not like all you got to do is leave Mormonism and you're happy. I've seen many, 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 many people leave Mormonism and be happy and healthier and happier. And I've seen several people get addicted to alcohol, wreck their lives, get addicted to drugs, get in abusive relationships, or just like not go to school, not have purpose and meaning, not have any community, get lonely, get depressed, become isolated, and lose their sense of purpose or drive, even if they don't mess with all that other stuff. But then usually they do mess with all that other stuff to self-medicate once they're depressed and anxious and have no meaning and purpose. So my question to you is, like, what if it's dangerous? What if you end up thinking that you have freedom, but you really end up harming your life more than it would have been harmed if you had stayed in the church? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, definitely.
That was a long question.
No, that was a good question.
Okay.
I would say you can still have your kite and your string, but I feel like I've just changed what my string is, because there are so many things the church protects from that are dangerous. Like how you said you can get addicted to drugs or alcohol or STDs or STIs. But there's also lots of things that the church not forces upon you, but trains you to do that are also dangerous. Like the way that the church allows youth to view themselves, and that negative self, that it's better to think of yourself negatively and be hard on yourself to become a better person than to give yourself grace and allow yourself to grow in a healthy, normal way. And so I think no matter where you go, no matter what religion it is, in or out, there's always something dangerous, because I was living the standards of the church exactly, and I almost died.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be something that you can't be protected from. There's always new and scary things. And that's why I think the string of the kite, to go along with the metaphor, can be whatever boundaries that you need to set for yourself. And that's why it can be scary to leave the church, because you have to figure out for yourself, like, how you want to live and how you're going to keep yourself safe and protect your boundaries. And so it doesn't matter where you go or what you believe. You're always going to have boundaries. And, like, there's nothing wrong with a moral code, obviously, but the part that is freeing about leaving the church is that you get to decide your own moral code. You get to decide how you're going to be ethical in the world. And as long as that isn't harming yourself or other people, then there's nothing wrong with doing it your own way.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, many ways to do that. Many paths.
So in the spirit of reconstruction, are you comfortable sharing some elements of your moral code?
Yeah, for sure. I think a big part of it is how I choose to treat other people. And like I'm never going to make someone feel, I think something I've told myself is I never want to speak to people the way I thought about them when I was Mormon. Because I may not have meant to treat people in an unkind way, but I've actually been thinking about this so much lately because people from my high school have been finding my TikTok. And some of those people are great humans who were never members of the church that probably felt judged by me in high school when I was this, like, very openly Mormon girl who wanted everyone else to be Mormon. And I know I was judgmental towards people who were doing drugs of any kind or drinking or having sex or anything. And beside the point that you shouldn't drink underage and all of those types of things, it wouldn't matter how old they were or what point of life I was in when I had those beliefs. I would have judged them no matter what. And so much of who I am now is I want people to come to me as they are, and I'll love them without wanting anything to change about them. And so instead of focusing so much on what other people are doing, I think my moral code now is to focus on what I'm doing. And as long as I feel happy and healthy and safe, then I know I'm good. And as long as I don't want anyone to feel judged or hurt by me or like I'm not a safe space. As long as I'm there, I feel like I'm following my moral compass. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like as I'm thinking about what it means to be a Mormon, what it meant for me to be a Mormon in terms of what was the highest priority, it actually wasn't about how I treated people. I mean, I'm not saying that Mormons don't believe it's important to treat people well. I think most Mormons do believe it's important to treat people well, except when they lose their faith, weirdly.
Yes.
But for me, my moral code as a Mormon was don't drink alcohol, don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't have premarital sex, don't masturbate. That was like don't drink coffee and tea.
Oh, for sure.
Those were the most crucial things. And then like, if you're doing all that and you've got extra cycles, then be kind to people,
Yeah,
don't judge
exactly.
people, right?
It's better. It was like, it's better for me to be a rude person, judgmental, than, God forbid, taste some coffee.
Right. Yeah.
I think what's hard is that when you grow up, in a system that teaches you to be self-critical and where you're constantly assessed and evaluated all the time. So really you're just one decision away from, shame and being, deemed not worthy. It's really difficult to extend to other people what you don't have for yourself.
Absolutely.
So many times the way we show up for other people is really just a reflection of how we show up for ourselves. So it makes sense, I guess, is what I'm saying, why it's so deeply problematic.
Yeah.
The judging thing.
It's so
because
true.
we are so we grew up in a system that was all about judging and assessing ourselves all the time.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay. So for you, it's about kindness and it's about self-awareness, self-knowledge, and making decisions that are congruent with your sense of mental health and well-being.
Yeah. Precisely.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Margie likes that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a
glad.
question around.
I do too.
Coming out of, again, kind of your experience of having other people want a certain life for you, wanting, roles for you, an identity for you. So you kind of coming out of that kind of recently. I mean, this is pretty recent, this transition work, but I would love to hear, so far what you have decided to want in this moment. What are you wanting for yourself in this moment?
The thing that is most important to me is definitely protecting my peace. So, I saw a quote once that was like, I will not ever again sit in a place or organization or state of mind that allows me in any way to betray myself. And so I think right now, I'm 21 years old. I feel like I've been given the gift of not necessarily starting over, but having a fresh view, because if my life path would have went how I thought it was going to go, I wouldn't be thinking this way now. I'd be on the hunt trying to get a priesthood holder so we could get married and have babies forever. But that's not what I want. And so I feel like because I have this opportunity to kind of go with the flow in life how I want to, I want to make sure I'm spending every moment giving myself what I deserve and only accepting from others what I deserve and protecting my peace.
I love that for you.
Thank you.
And that makes so much sense.
Thank
I
you.
think, given all that we've heard. Yeah.
It's very important.
Can I ask a question kind of related, which would be, what does healing look like for you right now?
Yeah, it kind of goes along with what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anytime I find myself falling back into those negative thinking patterns or feeling those feelings of anxiety and depression again, kind of being taken back to those scary and horrible and confusing moments on my mission and during my faith crisis, I think healing for me is remembering to ground myself, reminding myself who I am and what I deserve, and that I am not just my experiences and the bad things that have happened to me. So yeah, it kind of just goes along with protecting my peace. Like, as long as I'm focusing on that, I know that I'm healing in some way from the things that have happened.
Yeah. And what does ground you?
The ground, like,
yeah, grounding.
Yeah, grounding, like
idea of grounding.
Yeah. It sounds silly, but just like doing the things that make me happy, like being out in nature. Like, if I feel that way, I'm like, I need to get my feet on the ground outside. Like, remember that I'm just a tiny speck in the universe, and that things aren't as serious as I used to think they were. That every tiny step isn't going to determine my fate in heaven forever. Like, that's a big weight to carry as a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I can remind myself, like, I'm just doing what makes me happy and keeping my feet on the ground, literally grounding myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have hopes and dreams for yourself now? We talked about what you envisioned your life being for yourself as you graduated from high school and were contemplating a mission.
Yeah.
Do you have a vision for yourself now? And if so, what is it?
I'm currently trying to figure that out. I'm not gonna lie. Just sitting with the discomfort of not knowing. But
oh, look at you. That is just brilliant.
Thank you.
It's amazing. We're all there.
Yeah, everyone is in some way.
Right?
But I know I want to be a leader in some way, because especially in leaving the church, I've found leadership skills in myself that had to be pushed down. And I even was told, I was like, oh, you're a leader, like, you have so much potential, like every kid does. But as a woman in the church, there's not much you can do with that unless you want to tell other women to be sweet and obedient for the rest of your life. And I'm not putting down any female leaders in the church, obviously. But I want to be able to have a voice outside of Mormonism. Spread good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not sure yet whether that means school or doesn't. If it does mean school, what degree?
Yeah, exactly.
What career?
That's the problem.
You don't know any of that.
There's plenty of time.
There
for
is plenty
that.
of time.
How old are you now?
I'm 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess people always want to know what your beliefs, there's a lot of Christians who want ex-Mormons to still believe in God and Jesus. There's a lot of believing Mormons that still want ex-Mormons to believe in God and Jesus. But then there's just always the question of like, what do you still have a sense of spirituality now? And if so, how are your beliefs reconstructed? What do you want to say about spirituality and belief, if anything?
Yeah, I'd say I'm definitely a very spiritual person. And I think that's what's stuck with me. I think I was all along, but I was changing it to conform to Mormonism. But now instead of wondering what someone else would want me to do, I believe in myself more than anything. And trust myself and my intuition and my gut feeling more than anything. And I believe that everyone, it's kind of an obvious thing to say that everyone should be seen as equal, but it feels good to let go of the belief that as a part of the Mormon church, that I'm elite and I'm the best of the world, when really there's so much to learn from everyone else and their beliefs and what gives them purpose. If that, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Ironically, one of the things Jesus said is the kingdom of God is within.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not you believe in a literal Jesus or literal atonement or any of that stuff, his teachings say, look within, not externally. And he was critical of the religious priests and hypocrites, right?
Yeah.
And he was encouraging the inner knowledge and the inner introspection. And that's not to try and paint you as a Christian, but that actually is Christ consistent from how I understand Christ.
And I definitely, the actual teachings of Jesus Christ, the person, whether or not you believe he's God, are good. And something that I thought was funny or cool or something, metaphorically for me, was that in the Bible, when Christ died, the temple crumbled to the earth. And even when I went through the temple, I kind of thought, if he died, and Christians believe he fulfills all when he died, and the temple crumbled to the earth, it was almost like it wasn't needed anymore. And so I feel like my temple crumbled to the ground when I realized I don't need the church. And if that makes sense. I think about that a lot because as a believing Mormon, I was always like, why do we have temples if it crumbled to the earth when he died? Because he fulfilled everything. And so now I'm like, if my temple crumbled, I fulfilled it myself. I don't need the Mormon church.
I love that.
And what about any church? I
don't need any church, no.
Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Okay.
I definitely think there's something about leaving the Mormon church that disables a lot of people for trusting organized religion anymore, which is kind of how I am. But I like to be my own leader.
I guess you never say never because sometimes people do come back to religion or the church.
It's true.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to them. And I don't know my future, but as of right now, as of this moment, I don't have a lot of trust for organized religion.
Yeah. That's fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't either right now.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. All right. I guess I have one final question, but Margie, do you have any final questions?
I have a couple.
Okay,
I have a couple.
Yeah, take
Okay. I was curious, fun, this idea of fun, joy, was part of your teen years and seems like it's kind of like I sense it in you. Where do you find joy these days and a sense of fun where you can kind of lose some of the weight of being alive?
I love just like going out with my friends. I never thought I'd go out dancing at a bar. That was like the absolute last thing I ever saw myself doing. But now it's like, I can just go have fun and be free.
Yes.
Yeah, just doing fun things with my friends, being out in nature, trying new things. Kind of finding my sense of self a little bit more, remembering to be careful because I don't believe that I will never die how I used to.
Right.
Living every day to the fullest.
Mm.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. And before we go, I wanted to just, because I felt earlier when we were talking and I was asking you about your beautiful tattoo.
Oh, thank
here.
you.
For those in the listening audience, it's kind of a seeing eye, and it's on your neck.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So I thought, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I think, that theme is here in your story. So would you mind sharing a little bit about the tattoo and you getting it and what it means to you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love sharing about my tattoos.
This you can share about as many as you want.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't want you to feel like you
we'll
had
go
to
through
like
a tour.
shift in clothing or
no, it's fine
to do it. So,
this is my favorite tattoo and my most recent, and I've wanted it forever. Because not only is it seemed kind of like a scary move. It's very visible. Most people, when they see me, it's one of the first things they notice and ask about. And I wanted to do that because this tattoo represents so much of like who I am, because it is recently that I've really allowed myself to just put trust in myself and trust my intuition, and not even with like my faith and figuring out my spirituality, but literally everything in my life. Because before, like with dating or with choosing friends or choosing random activities to do, like everything, it's like I should pray about this, I should make sure it aligns with the church. And now I can really trust myself and notice how I feel when I'm around certain people or doing certain things. And I love it because the tattoo is a mix of like the third eye chakra and just like a seeing eye intuition. It represents trusting in yourself. And it was almost like proving to myself, like, I can take this step to show myself and others that I trust myself above everything else. And that's a good thing, finally, in my life. Like, finally, I can trust in myself and, like, lead with that every step of every day. So thank you for asking.
I love that.
All right. Well, this has been so wonderful. I guess I have one final question for you.
Okay.
So last episode, we talked about you living the Mormon Orthodox life, leading to you wanting to die and on a mission.
Yeah.
When you're living the gospel, and, you know, juxtaposing that with the Mormon teaching that wickedness never was happiness.
Yeah.
Now you've left the church and you've already said that you're happier and healthier than you were on your mission.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to ask you to bear your testimony, so to speak, about where you are now in terms of health and happiness.
Yeah.
And if there's people, like, our goal isn't to make people leave the church or push people to leave the church.
Of course.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
But like for somebody who's not happy wherever they are in life, in or out of the church, but specifically in Orthodox Mormonism in a way that isn't healthy for them, like it wasn't for you, in addition to bearing your testimony about your health and happiness now,
Yeah.
any parting words of wisdom for somebody who's in crisis?
Yes, and I think this is actually a perfect time to tie in. I forgot there was one other thing we were talking about earlier. And
Your
this
mission
goes along.
president?
Yes, this
Yeah.
goes along perfectly because I went to my mission president and his wife's homecoming over the summer. And that's like the end of their 3-year mission. So many missionaries I served with were there. And I sat in the very back. I wore an open back dress. And I just wanted to show up completely myself.
Open back to a non-Mormon just means not as modest as it could be,
Yeah.
especially for a Sunday.
Yes, because, and that's anything that a return missionary wears that it's obvious they're not wearing their garments.
Oh, because
becomes a
garments cover your
questionable.
back, and
Yeah.
so if your dress is not covering your back,
Then
you're not
it's
wearing
clear
garments.
you're not wearing garments,
Okay.
and it's a little taboo. But I wanted to just show up as myself, and I went with another friend, who no longer believes in the church, and I sat in the back, and my mission president was up there talking, and he looked to the back and looked at me, and he said, to any of my missionaries that have left the covenant path, just know, like, it's the biggest mistake you'll ever make. And he went on to say things about how Jesus loves you and all of that good stuff. But I guess just my response was, like, the biggest mistake I made was not trusting myself and going home earlier and saving myself from all that pain sooner. And the best choice I made was coming home, working through the hardest time I've ever experienced in my life. And I would never have thought I'd be where I am right now a year ago today. And finding out for myself what makes me the most happy, what I choose to reject and not believe in, and just doing what's best for myself. I would never call that the biggest mistake. I think I picked myself up out of the dirt, and with the help of people that love me and have my best interests at heart, finally got to a place where I hope I don't die anytime soon. And I never thought I'd say that. And so I think to any believing members that just don't understand why anyone would ever want to leave the church, I would just say, like, everyone's trying to navigate life without going crazy and just trying to make others happy, make themselves happy. Like, we're all just figuring it out. And the universe is so much bigger than the Mormon organization and so much bigger than all of our beliefs combined. And so we might as well just be open-hearted and respectful to everyone around us and respect when people can find their happiness, just like I respect my entire family, extended family, for finding their happiness in the Mormon church. But I would just hope that they'd listen to the stories of people that have left and have compassion. But yeah, I guess to the whole wickedness never was happiness thing, then why am I so happy?
Because the adversary can fake happiness.
Yeah, it's not true peace and happiness. I'm faking all of it. But yeah, that's my long-winded answer.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just joking. The Mormon church has a teaching that Satan can create counterfeit happiness. So
Yes.
if an ex-Mormon's ever happy, it's not
It's
genuine
not real
happiness.
happiness. Look at the darkness in my eyes.
There are literally answers for everything.
Yeah, there are answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. Well, Brinley Jensen, thank you so much for your courage and for your wisdom and your strength. I'm so glad you're feeling healthy and you're healthy now.
I am too.
And Margie and I are just excited to see where you go from here. And we want to see you become a leader and travel internationally in your
Thank
power.
you. Yeah.
And we don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do not doubt
Thank
it.
you
We
so much.
celebrate you.
Oh,
We're
thank
so-
you. I celebrate you back.
All right. So stay in touch, keep up the good work. And most
Yes.
importantly, thank you for your willingness to come on Mormon Stories and share your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Very humbling.
And Margie, thanks for joining. I will always choose you as a co-host when you're available and willing, unless you don't want to or can't for some reason. So thank you
Yeah, my pleasure.
for being here today.
My pleasure.
You make everything better.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. And thank you for joining us today on Mormon Stories. Thanks to everyone who commented. Thanks to the donors that make Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation possible. We couldn't do it without you. We also lose donors every month because people fall on financial hard times or lose their job or just move on. And so we're losing 8 to 20 donors a month, and we need to replace them to be able to keep going. So if you aren't a financial supporter of Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation, we would love if you could become a monthly donor, especially if you value this type of content, either for yourself or to pay it forward for other people. So to do that, you can go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button at the top of the page, and become a monthly donor for whatever amount you're comfortable with. $10 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. All our donations are tax deductible in the U.S. We're transparent in our finances, and all the money that we receive, we do our best to dedicate towards the mission of the Open Stories Foundation, which is to promote healing and growth, to support educating people, providing informed consent about the Mormon Church, both to members and to people who've never been members, so that everyone can see the church clearly and make informed decisions about the church. And we also, in the Open Stories Foundation, support faith transitions for Mormons struggling and doubting, and also we support healing and growth for after people decide the church no longer works for them, and in community. So if you support any of that, or if you want to support it, please become a supporter. There are other ways to support as well. You know, we're quickly reaching 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, but we need our YouTube subscribers to subscribe. So please subscribe if you're a YouTuber. You could also follow and subscribe us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So become followers and subscribers, comment. That always helps with the algorithm. Share this with everyone you can, this and other episodes. And of course, you can always email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. Give us your feedback. Give us ideas for great guests. We'll take all the help we can get. So be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Thanks for your support. And we hope to provide you with great content in the weeks, months, and years ahead. So take care, and we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Bye.